All right, listeners, strap in. We're kicking off this deep dive by hopping into a time machine, setting the dial for 1987, the year Death dropped. Scream bloody gore.
Oh yeah, a landmark year for sure.
We're talking about the birth of death metal, folks.
Yeah.
And to really get it, we got to dig into these lyrics. No trigger warnings here, people.
Well, and that's what makes this album, important, I guess. It's more than just music. It's a product of its time. To really understand it, gotta look past the surface, right?
Okay, so let's do that.
Think about what was going on back then, the anxieties, what was it everyone was freaking out about?
I mean, the Cold War was still a thing, right?
Exactly. And Infernal Death, track 1, jumps right into it. Brutal lyrics, stark imagery, no messing around.
Like those lines, human coals are burning, repulsive yet so true. Talk about confronting your mortality.
It's in your face. Death, decay, it's all there. Most metal bands, even the heavy hitters, weren't touching that back then.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And then, bam, zombie ritual kicks in. We're talking full-on undead, but not the romantic kind.
Oh no, this is pure, what's the word? Transgression. These zombies, they're like the embodiment of everything people were scared of.
Societal collapse, disease, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, think about it. Early 80s AIDS was this huge unknown. Fear was everywhere, you know? Zombies, they represented that chaos.
Wow. So we go from facing death to facing the end of the world as we know it,
Right.
all in 2 songs.
Intense. And then things take this turn inward with Denial of Life. It's like looking into a dark mirror.
Okay, so how did that fit in?
This song, it's all about the mental state of, well, everything we've been talking about. That feeling of being trapped, hopeless, wanting to escape.
I mean, everyone's felt that, haven't they?
Exactly, it's universal. But Death, they give it this voice, this raw, powerful voice.
You think that's what resonated with people, that realness?
I mean, the music does too, right? Those drums, the vocals, it's like oppressive almost, like you're trapped in this nightmare, which for a lot of people back then, the world kind of felt that way.
Yeah, I can see that. But then it gets, well, more intense. Sacrificial, mutilation, those are some heavy tracks.
Yeah, not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. But we got to remember the context, you know? Death metal, it was all about boundaries.
Pushing them, breaking them.
Both. And violence, especially to the body, that was like the ultimate taboo.
So you're saying there's more to it than just trying to be shocking?
Absolutely. It's making a statement, forcing people to see the ugly side, the darkness. In a way, it's like social commentary.
Never thought of it like that. But it makes sense. Okay, but how does a song like Regurgitated Guts and wow, that title, how does that fit in?
Right. I mean, that one is about as graphic as it gets. But look past the guts, so to speak.
If you can.
It's a metaphor. The body, it's like a rotting society.
Yeah.
Corruption, decay, it's all there, just, more visceral.
I'll say in his trance, your eyes, they bleed, your guts come forth for his own need. Those are some intense lyrics.
That's what Death did so well. Painted these vivid pictures, almost cinematic in your head.
And speaking of cinematic, can't forget Evil Dead, a whole song about the movie.
Exactly. And that's important, see, because it ties into this whole early 80s thing, the splatter films.
Lots of gore, pushing boundaries, kind of like death metal, right?
Totally. It was a cultural moment, People were obsessed with this stuff. Death just gave it a soundtrack.
But unlike some of those movies, which were all like blood and no brains, death, they had something to say.
Oh, absolutely. Depth, emotion. It wasn't just shock value. It made you feel something. That's the brilliance of Scream Bloody Gore.
Yeah, totally. Okay, but then we have Baptized in Blood and Torn to Pieces, which, while still pretty full on, seem to take a step back, look at the bigger picture a bit.
And those songs, they're almost more relevant today than ever, which is kind of scary when you think about it. The fear of collapse, of losing everything.
You mean like what we were saying about the 80s?
It's timeless, right? We might not be worried about the Cold War now, but there's always something. Climate change, politics, who knows what the future holds.
Yeah, it's like death tapped into this primal fear that's always been there.
And they unleashed it in this raw, powerful way, unlike anything else at the time. Which, of course, leads us to the title track, but we should probably save that for next time.
Yeah, it's like they were channeling something dark and powerful, something that's always lurking beneath the surface, just waiting for the right moment to explode.
Exactly. And explode it does, which brings us, of course, to the title track, Scream Bloody Gore. This is it. The grand finale, where everything we've been talking about comes together. The death, the violence, the imagery, the sheer sonic brutality.
There's a monster of a song. The riffs are just relentless. The drumming is like a jackhammer in your skull, and Chuck's vocals. I mean, come on. He sounds possessed.
It's interesting you say possessed because Schultener often talked about his lyrics as if they were coming from somewhere else, from some dark primal force.
Oh, yeah. Like he was just the messenger.
Exactly. There's this line in Scream Bloody Gore, "Inject the reborn terror, the blood comes spurting out. Another to control, add it to your count." It's chilling.
Yeah, it's like he's giving a voice to something monstrous, something that wants to watch the world burn. But, and maybe this is just me, there's also this weird sense of exhilaration in it. Like, yeah, it's terrifying, but there's also this strange kind of freedom in that chaos.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the genius of Death's music, the duality of it. It terrifies you, but it also empowers you. It forces you to confront your own mortality, your own darkness, but in doing so, it also liberates you from those fears.
It's like staring into the abyss, you realizing that, hey, maybe the abyss isn't so bad after all. Maybe it's beautiful in its own twisted way.
Precisely. It's about embracing the darkness, not shying away from it. And Scream Bloody Gore, it threw those doors wide open.
It's like they said, here it is, folks, the unvarnished truth. Are you brave enough to face it?
And for a lot of people, back then and even today, the answer was a resounding yes. Scream Bloody Gore wasn't just an album, it was a cultural earthquake. It shook the foundations of heavy metal and birthed an entirely new subgenre.
It's crazy to think that it all started with these lyrics, these riffs, this raw, untamed energy. It's like a bolt of lightning from out of nowhere, changing the landscape forever.
And that's the power of art, isn't it? To challenge, to provoke, to transform. Scream Bloody Gore did all of that and more.
So, after diving headfirst into this maelstrom of gore and brutality, what's your verdict, listener? Is it just noise? Just shock value?
Or is it something deeper, something that speaks to those primal instincts we all have, something that forces us to confront the darkness within ourselves and the world around us?
Because even though we've reached the end of the album, the conversation doesn't end here.
Death's journey, both musically and lyrically, continued far beyond Scream Bloody Gore.
They didn't just rest on their laurels. They kept pushing, kept evolving, kept exploring new sonic territory, which, if you're up for it, is something we can delve into right now. It's like they ripped open a portal to another dimension, this dark, chaotic world of sound and fury, and said, hey, you want to come in? But don't blame us if you don't make it back out.
And what's amazing is they didn't just stay in that sonic hellscape. They evolve, push themselves further with each album. But yeah, Scream Bloody Gore, that was the big bang, the one that changed everything.
Right, but for some people, that rawness, it's a bit much. They hear it and think, okay, that's just noise. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
But beneath all the blood and guts, so to speak, there's real depth, isn't there?
Oh, tons. It's not just about being loud and aggressive, although they were certainly good at that. It's about using that intensity to explore something deeper, something human.
That's what I love about this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're taking this music that some people might dismiss as, I don't know, noise, whatever, and we're showing that there's real heart to it, real intelligence.
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the surface, beyond the shock value, and finding the art, the meaning beneath.
Because at the end of the day, whether it's death metal or, I don't know, opera, it's all about connecting with something larger than yourself, right?
Absolutely. It's about finding those universal truths that resonate across time and cultures.
And Death, they did that in a way that few bands ever have. They took the darkest corners of the human experience, the fear, the violence, the mortality, and turned it into something powerful, something transcendent.
And they never stopped pushing those boundaries, challenging themselves and their listeners. That's why their music still resonates today, why it continues to inspire new generations of musicians.
It's a legacy that few bands can match. So, to wrap things up, what would you say to someone who's maybe hesitant to dive into Death's music? What would you say to convince them to give it a shot?
I'd say don't be afraid of the darkness. Embrace the intensity. Let the music wash over you, and you might be surprised by what you find.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to explore the sonic universe of Death. Until next time, keep those ears open and those minds hungry for more.